Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Bryce and I'm here to take you on a fantastic journey through powerlifting technique. What we're going to do is we're going to pop a bunch of people up on this screen, viewers of the channel who have submitted their videos for this purpose. And if anybody out there is interested in submitting for our Form Check Friday series, go ahead and submit to formcheckfriday@gmail.com and we will put you in the, what do we got? 800 plus emails, random number generate the heck out of it and pull a couple out of there to take a look at. So today we have 5 submissions as per usual. We're gonna dive right into those. Let us take a look. Our first submission here comes from Jun, and Jun says, I would like you to check on my form for sumo deadlift. The video I chose here is a video of 100 kilos for 6 reps. He says the last rep was to strengthen my grip strength. Is my stance okay? Should I widen it? Appreciate you telling me if I do anything wrong. All right, Jun, let's take a quick peek here. So, stance width off the hop looks pretty good. I think it's tough to see from this angle, but it looks like we're maybe sitting a little bit too low when we initially start this rep. Now, there is actually a second video from the side, and I'm just gonna download that quick here. But it looks to me like he's sitting his butt just a little bit too low. We've talked about this a few times, but I wanna be able to actually illustrate it here. Perfect. Let's see if he does it on this rep as well. So yeah, we can see that right now we're sat very low. And honestly, I would really much rather see the hips a fair bit further back. So let me guess. I'm gonna say that his back angle is gonna change to something more like this. His knee is gonna come back to about here, and that's about what it's gonna look like when the bar comes off the floor. Let's see if I'm right. Oh, would you look at that? All right, Jin. So the big thing here is to start looking at changing your start position, because right now we are sitting way too low, worrying way too much about being upright. The knees are too far forward here. I'd like to see your knees a little more like this, as opposed to like this. So bring those knees back, bring that hip back, and allow your butt to come up just a little bit. So that way, see how when we start pulling here, we actually end up really kind of shifting and losing position. And we're only losing position because we're starting far too upright, far too deep in the hips. So this would be a pretty good start position, but we're starting here. So we're getting this big shift throughout the reps. Another thing I'm seeing here is if we look at your lockout, we are pretty shrugged up in the shoulders. Oops, here we go. Pretty shrugged up in the shoulders. And ideally, we're gonna be a little more pulled down through the shoulders. So if we look at the shoulder blades, which should sit right about there, what we wanna try to do is we wanna try to pull those down the back. This is gonna help us make our arms nice and long. If you ever heard the long arms cue, we wanna use that so we're not shrugging up. When we shrug up, the whole arm moves up. That makes our lockout a solid 1 to 2 inches higher up, which means we're pulling the bar through more range of motion, which for any of you sumo cheaters out there, like myself, we are trying to minimize range of motion, right? And as we can see here, he's doing some grip work, just holding the bar, which also, as a side note, is a great way to train your grip. Just, I mean, if you're trying to improve your grip for the sake of deadlifting more weight and holding more weight on your deadlifts, the best way to do it is static holds at the end of your deadlifts. So those would be the big things I would work on. Is the biggest thing. I don't think your stance width is an issue. I think the big thing is going to be not bringing your hips so low, thinking more about packing yourself back behind the bar, and perhaps pulling the slack out of the bar just a little bit better. Let's see who's next here. So the next one comes from Gary. Now, Gary, I think, has some squat and some bench in the video. I've chosen to take a look at his bench press. He says he actually tries to cue himself with a decent arch, and his bench grip is ring finger on the ring. So far to me, everything feels pretty solid right now, except my shoulders feeling sore and achy after the workout. I want to try to achieve the flaring of elbows, but not too much to hurt my shoulders as well. Well, that right there is a bit of a misunderstanding, because honestly, flaring the elbows out is not going to hurt your shoulders. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that, but the flaring of the elbows does not inherently create injury risk or pain. A lot of times it's just more of a result of volume and intensity, and we know that I say that enough. I hope you would select my videos. I'm really keen to receive help from you. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. All right, let's take a look here. So I might have to scrub through this video a little bit to get to Gary's bench, but let's see. Looks like his bench might actually be first. All right, let's see what we got going on here. So it looks pretty good. I like the setup. We've got like a bit of a sort of decline position here. We've got a decent bit of leg drive. The top of the knee is a little bit lower than the hip, which often will help with producing a bit of leg drive. The one thing I'm noticing right off the top here is when we get the bar down to the chest, I want you to just watch and see if you notice anything about the bar. So we come down. Oop, I totally miscircled there, but anyways, we come down and then the bar settles, sinks, and shifts. So we're not tight on the chest. And one thing that I always preach to my clients is to try to create a tight position where the weight of the bar is in your hands, not resting on your chest, where you're staying tight, keeping tension through the muscles that are performing the movement throughout the entirety of the movement, and that includes any isometric pauses, especially when they're a function of competition. The other thing I want everybody to pay attention to for just a second here is the elbows. Now I want you to pay attention to the elbows specifically as he starts to press, because what happens is we get a bunch of extra tuck as he starts to press. So the first movement, excuse me, as he goes to press, and I'll just maybe play this and let you guys watch, is a tuck. So we're getting loose on the chest and then tucking the elbows to start the movement. And when we over tuck like that, that could actually be the cause of your elbow pain or your shoulder pain. The fact that we're forcing so much external rotation as we press the bar off the chest. Perhaps if you let those elbows out more naturally a little bit, we wouldn't end up with those issues. And we would also end up with a bit of a better bar path. We would end up seeing the bar go back over the shoulders and then up, as opposed to up and then back. Bar path actually isn't too bad, but I can tell you're struggling to get that bar back. That rep was actually, your last rep was probably actually your best one, because you were too fatigued to over tuck. So you see we saw the elbows flare a little bit on that last rep, right here. That's what we're looking for. That's what we want to see every rep. In these, staying way too tucked. And the loosening and then re-tucking off the chest is going to make it hard to press that bar through a decent bar path. So, big takeaways there, Gary. Number one, stay tighter on the chest. Number two, don't tuck to press the bar off the chest. Just push. Push the bar back. Don't worry about tucking to press. Don't worry about pulling the elbows in to press. Next, we have Simon. And Simon's doing some conventional. He says that he just competed in his first powerlifting meet, so congrats, Simon. Been trying to fix my conventional form for months, even tried to work with lower weights in the beginning of my Candido programming to straighten out my back with no success. Implementing back strengthening exercises have helped a little bit, but not considerably. I've noticed that at sub-maximal weights, 315 to 405, my back remains neutral, but anything past that makes my upper back round considerably. Any tips would be greatly appreciated. All right, so he's got a set here of 405 for triple at RPE 9. And that's the video we're gonna take a look at. So Simon doing some conventional deadlifts, 405 for 3 at 9. Now let's see if we can figure out what's going on with Simon's upper back. He says that it's rounding more than he would like it to. So right here is where the rounding is happening, and it's right as you come off the floor. So I think you could probably learn to and practice pulling the slack out of the bar a little bit more. So making sure that you're more adequately pulled into the bar before you try to push the bar off the floor, as well as just kind of focusing on keeping that back tight, because it's not the upper back. The upper back actually looks pretty good. If we watch, I would consider this area upper back and anything here mid or lower back. So let's see where the breakdown happens. We can see it happens starting in the pelvis and the low back. So it actually happens right in between those two marks that I made. So it's happening like right here. Now, if we can essentially just even mentally cue you to maintain a little bit more extension in that low back, as well as, I know that you said that you dialed it back, tried working with lower weights. The fact that you can get it to, you know, do what you want it to do at lower weights tells me that you can do it. It's just a matter of creating a smart progression into using heavy weights again. I think the big thing here is that yes, you can do it with lighter weights, but you can't do it with heavier weights yet. You're going to need to treat, I mean, if your goal here is to get to a flat back, neutral back deadlift, as it sounds like it is, you're gonna have to treat the round back deadlift as a missed lift. So none of these reps, like this is missed rep, right? Missed rep. Like, we're not counting that. We're not doing any reps like this when we're trying to rebuild the movement. Now, I'm not saying that the back rounding is wrong. If anybody's been on our live streams, you know that we chant, flexion is not necessarily a mechanic for injury, because that's a really, really common misconception. But let's see here. The other thing I'm noticing is that the lockout is non-existent. Like this is the most locked out point. You're gonna have to do better than that if you're gonna be competing. So, getting back to the back, lighter weights for long enough that you can start pushing the intensity up again. If the back's breaking down, you're not doing yourself any favors if what your goal is to cultivate a flat back technique. So just more mindfulness, slower progression. It sounds like you can achieve what you want to see, you just can't do it with heavy weights yet. It's important to add that yet qualifier at the end. Next we have Daniel Clark. Daniel's doing some squats. He says he's recently had some issues with shifting back out of the hole and hips rising. He says he's switched to flats, which helps, but he wants us to let him know what we think. Let's take a peek here. So, switch to flats to try to solve the problem of the hips and knees shooting back and hips shooting up out of the bottom. Again, this could very well be one of those things where we just need to work with adequate and appropriate intensities for cultivating technical change. This to me looks like a very acceptable amount of backward shift. And what we're talking about when we talk about this sort of backwards shift that Daniel's mentioned is out of the hole. So we get to the bottom of the squat here, and then in more severe cases, what's going to happen is the knees are going to shift back, which is going to cause the hips to shift up, and we're going to end up with a torso angle way closer to horizontal, right? As opposed to being this, we're going to end up with a torso angle that's a little more like this. However, Daniel looks like he's doing a pretty good job of things. And looks like he's sort of combating that tendency pretty well. I think the first and third rep there, where we do get a little bit of shift, you'll notice one of the things that also happens is we shift forward in the bottom. So if we watch the knees and the hips, just watch us shift forward into the bottom. Just that last little bit of looseness, and then when we come up, we do get a little bit of that backwards shift. The second rep, I feel like Daniel does a much better job of it. Stays back a little bit, and we don't end up quite so far forward. We don't end up, maybe it's more a matter of looseness than it is even moving forward, but just being conscious of creating that bottom position, not falling, not loosening up in the bottom. But these all look very, very good to me, actually, Daniel. I think that the switch to flats, if that's what helped, then it certainly did help, because it doesn't appear to be that you're having that issue anymore. At least not in any significant way. It looks like you're doing a really good job of keeping the knees forward, trying to keep some pressure through that forefoot, and ending up, you know, maintaining your torso angle a lot better than it sounds like you used to. So good on you for making that change. Next, we have Ashley B doing some bench press. And she says, I would love if you would form check my bench press. I'm looking to compete in powerlifting and would like to know any key points that I'm either doing right or wrong. This lift is 95 kilos, which is around 80% of my 1RM. This looks good. So if you're looking to compete in powerlifting, the number one thing I would do is start pausing. Start pausing almost all of your bench press. Your main bench press movement is going to now be a paused bench press. You can use touch and go bench press as an accessory or supplemental exercise, but we do want to be pausing the majority of our bench press reps. Now, if we look at the bench press itself, you can see he's sort of up on his toes here, hips up in the air, doing a good job of getting some leg drive set and kind of engaged, pushed back into his arch. Chest is staying up into the bar really well. I would probably investigate, at the very least, how moving your grip a little bit wider would affect things. Again, it's something that we're not always going to be stronger wider. That's something that's important to note, but it does decrease the range of motion. And for a number of people, that can be conducive to being stronger, to being able to move more weight. So if you haven't, I would maybe use a wide grip bench press variation and try that out and see how that feels as compared to your normal competition grip here. In terms of the bench itself, it looks like we're getting a little bit of flare on the way up, which is good. That's going to be conducive to a good bar path. Like I said, the chest is coming up and staying up into the bar really well. Shoulders seem locked in. Even on the unrack, which out of these racks is quite difficult to maintain that shoulder tightness, it looks like Ashley's doing a really good job of that. So it looks really good. I would practice more pauses and I would investigate a bit of a wider grip, but other than that, I would try not to change much because it looks like you're pretty comfortable with a very adequate technique already. And that, my fine people of YouTube, is going to be it for today. So I want to thank you all very much for tuning in. If you're interested in submitting to Form Check Friday, go ahead and send those emails to formcheckfriday@gmail.com and we will add you to the lottery. Make sure to stay tuned every Friday for a new episode. If you enjoyed this video or you have any questions about anything, let us know in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. We have tons more powerlifting content coming at you. And leave a like if you liked it. We'll see you all in the next video.